Hello, everyone. I am so excited today. We've got Roberto Milk with us. He's the CEO and co-founder of Novica, and he has sent nearly $90 million to artisans around the world. You're going to want to hear more about this guy.
Welcome to the Your Mark on the World show with your champion of social good, Devin D. Thorpe.
This episode is made possible via the support of our sponsors, including Johnson & Johnson's Caring Crowd. Roberto, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So nice to be here.
Well, the pleasure is all ours. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really exciting to learn about your work. I've got to say, Novica looks to me like 100 or 1,000 other little social impact startups that I've seen that have tried to create a path from artisans in the developing world to customers in the developed world.
Right.
And most of them fail to achieve scale. You seem to have achieved some real scale. What is your secret?
Well, it's so interesting because I hear it all the time when I talk to people. They said, you know what, I had this idea back in college. I traveled to Kenya and I went, and so I hear that a lot. And I know that there's a lot of sites like ours out there. I think from the very beginning, we really wanted to do it big. And we thought about it in a big way. What we ended up doing is we said, how do we completely transform the game for artisans? And we looked at the current system and it wasn't working. An artisan in a remote area selling to a middleman that sells to another middleman that goes to some international, fair that then sells to retailers that sell to the customer. I mean, it just really didn't work. The system was broken for artisans. And so we said, how do we reinvent this in a major way? And so we said, look, we're going to open offices all over the world. These offices will be in places like Peru and Brazil and Guatemala and areas that we have family and friends, and we're going to work directly with little artisans, like the artisans you see in the market, right? And to do that, we had to raise a lot of money. So we ended up raising about $20 million. So we did it. We approached it thinking big from the very beginning. We partnered with National Geographic, and we had really great partners like the World Bank and the Grassroots Business Fund. And we really we focused on scale from the beginning.
The thing that still baffles me about your success is that you have started from a place of supply and impact, right? You're looking at the artisans and you're trying to solve their problem. The problem is the money comes from customers. How did you ultimately develop a customer base? Because without customers, you can have, all you would end up with is a massive warehouse full of artisanal stuff.
Yeah, it's so true. What you said is so, so true. If it wasn't for the customers, we wouldn't exist. And it's funny, but in the initial plans, it was far more artisan focused than customer focused. And what we ended up realizing is that we have to create a system that works for both. And so we've really developed this whole mantra around happiness. So happy artists and happy customers. And what ends up happening is we end up having to turn down a lot of artists. And that's kind of the hard part of the whole program, because we have the offices, we're in the regions, we're in 8 different global regions where artisans are constantly coming in and out. We would like to work with all of them. If it was up to me, it's just like, let's just, that's a great story. Let's work with you too. Bring them all in. But what we end up having to do is we have pretty strict quality control. And so we only accept about 1 in 3 artists right now. And so, and the artists and even those 1 in 3, they usually go through a vetting process where the quality gets a little better. So with the artists, we say, look, you know what? You can charge your price. So that the system's set up around the artists charging their price. And we want you to charge more than what you charge locally. But we want you to use better materials, better quality. If you're going to quickly do something for the local tourist market, then in this case, it's better to take your time and get the details down to perfection, because customers appreciate the details. And the customers take that to heart. And they actually really get encouraged by it because they're usually told to cut corners by middlemen. They're like, no, do this or slap this on or, use this other material that's cheaper. And we're the opposite. We say, you know what, your name is on it. We want you to sign the piece. You're telling your story. And that customer in Ohio is going to tell your story and tell their friends about it if they get something that's amazing. And so you're creating your own reputation. And the artists love that. But yeah, no, it's been tough. We've had to cut a lot of artists that come to the offices. We had to say, you know what, come back next year. Maybe we can work with you if you increase your quality.
So clearly, one of the secrets is quality.
Yeah.
But there's still a gap in my understanding of how you have reached an audience. How did you find customers and convince them that you could deliver a quality product in the first place?
Well, okay, so that has to do with a lot of partnerships, but it's funny how quality ends up being a major driver, because in everything we do, the packaging, so someone that gets our repeat customer rate is through the roof. So if someone has that one experience with us, they just fall in love with it, because they get that package is hand packed. It's a beautiful handmade item, but then it's hand packed with so much love. You've got all the little extras we put in there. The artists or someone in our office, they sign postcards. Everything is gift wrapped pretty much, unless someone says, please don't gift wrap my item, and all of the extras are in there, and the item's coming straight from our office internationally. You get it straight from Brazil or Bali or Thailand or India. And so there's a whole experience to it. And so just because that experience is so special, people come back at a much higher rate. And then in terms of finding customers, that's really, that's the hardest part of the game, if you ask me. And it's the partnerships that we do with like-minded organizations, and National Geographic has been a real key driver in that.
Well, tell us a little bit about the National Geographic partnership. What does that look like operationally?
Well, they were early investors and lenders to the company. And what they did is they opened up doors from their own sourcing areas. So they had a catalog that they'd done for many years. And we ended up supplying most of the artisan goods in that catalog at the very beginning. And then they kept growing that, and it became its own thing, until ultimately we ended up buying that back from them. So now we run the National Geographic catalog, which is now the Novica in association with National Geographic catalog. And that's been a great story for us in terms of first working and supplying for them, and now actually being the ones that run the catalog.
Wow, that is great. That is great. As you reflect on the impact you're having for artists around the world, in developing world countries especially, what are the success stories, the impact stories that come to mind that you reflect on, that help you sleep, that help you get up in the morning when there are challenges?
Right.
The things that really are touchstones of motivation for you.
Well, there's so many of those. We're so touched by so many of the stories that we hear from our regional offices, and when we travel and go there and meet the artists, it's just amazing. The stories of how artists have completely rebuilt their lives. Their kids are in school, they're providing basic needs for their family, the communities are growing, they're hiring people. A lot of our artists have gone from being single entrepreneurs, to now being employers of people. They have 2, 3, 4, 5 employees. And so it's great to see that growth at the cottage industry level. It's powerful. Specific examples that come to mind. One just recently, one of our artists from Mexico, his name's Alejandro de Cesarte. He does metal wall decor, and he has these metal suns and crosses and all kinds of garden kind of patio decor items. And he recently discovered that he's autistic. And he discovered that his autism, and he feels very strongly about this, that his autism is what leads to his creativity. And so he put this very powerful statement together about how he's so thankful to have had the platform to be able to grow and sell his art, because he's found himself in his art, and that he now understands the way he ticks. And it's really interesting to hear how he talks about his struggles with his own autism, and how he's overcome it, and how he basically deals with the world, and it's a very powerful story, and it motivates me a lot. And so that's one story. Another is I'm wearing this pendant right here from an artist in Ghana. His name's Collins, and Collins was a struggling artist in Ghana for many years, and then found his way through us. And then he had a series of health issues. One of them related to he needed to get dialysis, and so we were able to, through his works and through other artists that stepped up when he was too sick to carve his own pieces, the community stepped up and supported him, and the money would go to him to support his treatments. And then he had an emergency one night, and the hospital would not treat him, the public hospital in Accra, Ghana. And he called our national rep, the head of our office there, and our guy was on the phone saying, no, he's good for it. It was a $300 procedure that he needed done, and they ended up turning him away, and he died that night. And so, and he has 2 kids. The 2 kids are being supported through his ongoing sales. That there are other artists that now make the pieces for him, and the money goes into a foundation that provides for his children. And so stories like that just made me feel like, wow, $300. You know, that the hospital, they discriminated against him because they clearly thought that he wasn't going to pay for it, and they didn't believe the guy on the phone, our guy.
Yeah.
So, but it's just the price of life is different in some of our regions, and it's just really it shows you how impactful, you know, these sales are for so many people, and how in the case of Collins is life or death. And so there's a lot of inspirational stories, a lot of tough stories. You know, a lot of refugees that are working, people that have been through a lot, and those stories really motivate us to sell as much as we can. That's the number one thing our artists ask us, is just, we're like, what can we do for you guys? They say, just sell more, reach out to more customers, you know, have them appreciate our stuff as much as you can.
As you mentioned refugees, do you have any refugees in camps creating products for you now? I realize, you know, there are tens of millions of refugees in camps, really limited in their income opportunities.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, so the co-founder, who's actually my mother-in-law, which is a whole nother story of doing business with your mother-in-law.
Yeah.
But she spent 20 years with the United Nations in the UNHCR department, which is the department that handles refugees. And she's been to, you know, 70 plus countries and speaks 7 languages. And she's just this incredible woman who does all these crazy things, you know, all over the world. And she really felt strongly. And that's one of the things that drove her to help start Novica, was that she wanted to go to a lot of the communities where she had helped people that were displaced and give them economic opportunities to get to the next level and to create opportunities for themselves. And so, we work with communities. I think probably some of those communities, we could work better with them. Like, for example, there's Syrian refugee camps that we would love to work with some certain organizations, but a lot of that ends up having to, we need help from nonprofits that are on the ground that can help organize it. And so what ends up happening, so those would be, and that's something that we're working on, is trying to create these ties with some of the United Nations backed nonprofits that are there on the ground. But we have a lot of war refugees in Central America. And Central America is a whole nother story, because the more time that we spend in Central America, we see that, you know, the border wall and all this stuff that we hear about in the news, like, there's a root cause to a lot of that. And it has to do with, you know, the wars of the 1980s, you know, in Central America, and how many people were displaced, how many people were killed in the villages, you know, the death squads. And a lot of that had to do with, basically, it was the Cold War that was happening in Central America. And so many of our artists have been through that. One of our best jewelers, he was sexually assaulted at age 17. His mother was killed. He became the sole provider for his 2 younger siblings, and he built this business out of nothing. And some of those artists that are with us in Central America, they're artists that, you know, that are entrepreneurial, and they'd be desperate to just find a better life. and they found it through Novica, luckily. And so the idea of emigrating and going somewhere else like Mexico or the US or something like that, it's not a factor for them, because they're able to provide a living for themselves and for their community. And so I think that there's those stories that for me are very impactful too. When you look at root causes to certain things that we just talk about in the, but there's root causes to them. Yeah.
Roberto, what are you most proud of having accomplished?
That's a tough question. I think because we don't sit around and the reason that's so hard is because there's so much more that we want to do. We're right. We've sent almost $90 million to artists so far. And when someone asks about that, we're just thinking about, well, how can we get to 1 billion sent to artists? How do we amplify this even more? How could we be in more countries working with more artisans? And so I think that the thing I'm most proud of would be that we created this system. And the thing that I most want is to amplify it. And for more people, for us to be a household name that people think about, oh, you know what, I'm going to buy a gift. Let me buy it from Novica, or, it's just something that comes to mind that becomes a more, because every single purchase makes a significant impact on someone. So you're not just getting a beautiful item, but you're really helping someone out. So I think that's probably what we're proud of, but also what I said as like the biggest goal,
Yeah. What's the most important lesson you've learned?
Well, we've learned so much. I mean, you learn from mistakes, and then you become that much better for it if you're listening. Some people, they keep making the same mistakes over and over again, so they're not listening, and I think I've learned to listen. I think that's so if something isn't going right or something's going too slowly, what can be done to change that? And how do you make the tough decisions that you have to make sometimes to accelerate that change, or to create something new? And I think that's something that we've learned over the years for sure, is, you got to make tough decisions, and not everything is what you plan it out to be. And so how quick can you move into plan B and C and turn those into great plans that you look back and we did plan C, but that should have been plan A anyways, so yeah.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
Roberto, you could be doing anything. Obviously, you have a brilliant mind. Why did you choose to tackle something so focused on impact?
Well, that's a good question. I feel like what we're doing here is something that's so natural, and in a lot of ways it comes from a deep inspiration that I feel like I've received through my grandmothers. My Peruvian grandmother was an artisan. My American grandmother, they were missionaries. My grandmother and grandfather on my American side, and they lived all over the world. My grandparents started their mission mission work in Cuba, where they were for almost 15 years, and then they traveled, and they were in Vietnam and in Mexico and in Haiti, and they did work all over the world. And so for them, it was just how do you and they were figuring out new systems for farming and agriculture. So they were like, how do you create better systems for people that don't have current opportunities? And I've always been inspired by them and my Peruvian grandmother, just, the work of an artist. And then in our travels, seeing so many artists that were so talented, yet so underappreciated, and didn't have the income. So those were just drivers, strong root drivers to action. And it's interesting, but and I was an investment banker first, but I was only an investment banker because it was the path to this. The idea came right before that, and we incubated it. The group of us that started it, we incubated it, and I went into investment banking, and I loved investment banking. And I know a lot of people that say, they hated it or whatever. I worked 90 hours a week, 100. There's a few weeks that I clocked 100 hours, but I just loved it because I was incubating this. So it had a purpose. I was working really hard, and many of the contacts that came out of that helped us start this company and think big with it all came out of investment banking. And so I'm very grateful for that 4-year stint. And the money was incredible in investment banking. I mean, had I stuck with investment banking, of course, you'd be making more money than in doing a more mission-driven thing. But I feel very strong that I've found my calling.
No, that's great.
So it's fulfilling. Yeah.
So Roberto, what is your superpower?
Superpower. Whoa. I think the first thing that comes to mind there is being a dad, because I've got 4 kids, and I somehow managed to balance it all. And I hope that they would think that I'm a great dad, because I strive to be. So I think that my superpower may be balance, and it's something that I'm always working on, but something that I really strive to do better and better. And it's just really finding that balance so that I can be a great husband, a great father, and also great at the business and what we do. And so that's the secret, I think, to life, is really balance and fitting it all in and feeling the gratitude and the appreciation for what you're doing, so that you don't end up all stressed and full of anxiety, which could happen easily in something when you're so spread thin all over the place. Yeah.
Well, Roberto, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. I know you're busy and you've got to run, but before you go, would you take just a minute to tell people how they can learn more about Novica and how they can connect with you personally?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So the website is www.novica.com. And also we have a pretty active presence on Facebook and Instagram. So find us through your social media channels as well. And with me personally, I'm on LinkedIn. So feel free to connect through LinkedIn. And I really look forward to hearing from some of you.
All righty. Well, Roberto, again, thank you so much for being with us today. And we wish you every success in continuing to create more opportunities for artists around the world.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on.
All righty. Let's do some good.
At Caring Crowd, we believe everyone has the power to make a difference. Through our crowdfunding platform for community health, we empower passionate people to drive real change. Whether you work for a nonprofit organization, volunteer, or want to get involved for the first time, you can post a campaign on Caring Crowd. Join us, because caring is where change begins.
Thank you for listening. Devin Thorpe's mission is to end extreme poverty, improve global health, and mitigate climate change before 2045 by finding and sharing the stories of those who are doing the most good. You can join with other listeners to accelerate Devin's mission by visiting helpdevin.org right now.